The bus groaned to a stop, and I stepped out into the muggy summer air. My duffel bag slung over one shoulder. Camp Whispering Pines looked like something out of a postcard. If the postcard had been printed in the 1950s and left to fade in the sun, the cabins were rustic, which is a nice way of saying they looked one strong breeze away from collapsing. The lake was a murky green, and the woods, well, the woods were just there, looming like they had secrets they weren't planning to share. "Welcome to your worst nightmare," Jake said, clapping me on the back. He was my best friend, and the only reason I'd agreed to this whole summer camp counselor thing. Jake was the outdoorsy type, always ready with a compass and a pocket knife. Me? I was more of a stay inside and watch horror movies kind of guy. But here I was, about to spend 8 weeks in the middle of nowhere, trying to convince a bunch of kids that I was responsible enough to keep them alive. Margot, the camp director, greeted us with a clipboard and a no-nonsense expression. She looked like she'd been carved out of granite and had zero patience for nonsense. "You're late," she said, eyeing me like I'd already messed up. "Traffic," I said, shrugging. "You know how it is." She didn't laugh. The first few days were fine. I mean, as fine as being surrounded by screaming kids and questionable cafeteria food can be. The camp had all the usual activities: canoeing, archery, and, of course, the nightly campfire, where we told ghost stories. That's where I first heard about the Watcher. "They say he's tall, like really tall," one of the campers whispered, her eyes wide. "And he hides in the trees, watching you. If he catches you, you disappear, forever." I rolled my eyes. "Sounds like someone's been watching too many scary movies," I said, trying to sound reassuring. But the truth was, the story gave me the creeps. Maybe it was the way the firelight flickered on the kids' faces, or the way the woods seemed to press in around us, but something about it felt off. The next day, strange things started happening. A camper swore they saw a figure standing in the woods during a night hike. A counselor found their cabin ransacked, even though they swore they'd locked the door. I tried to brush it off. Kids have wild imaginations, and raccoons are sneaky little jerks, but the unease lingered. It happened during a game of flashlight tag. I was hiding behind a tree, trying not to laugh as I heard the other counselor stumbling around in the dark. That's when I felt it, a cold, prickling sensation on the back of my neck. I turned around, and there it was, a tall, gaunt figure standing just beyond the tree line, its face obscured by the shadows. My heart stopped. I blinked, and it was gone. "Did you see that?" I whispered to Jake when I found him. "See what?" he asked, looking at me like I'd lost my mind. "Nothing," I said, forcing a laugh. "Just thought I saw something, but I knew what I'd seen. And I knew it wasn't nothing. After that night, things got worse. Campers started reporting whispers in the woods, shadows that moved on their own, and a pervasive feeling of being watched. The power went out, and the phone stopped working, cutting us off from the outside world. Margot insisted it was just a storm or technical issues, but even she started to look uneasy. "Stay in your cabins after dark," she ordered, her voice tight. "And no more ghost stories." Too late for that, I thought. The first to disappear was Tommy, a camper with a knack for getting into trouble. He went missing during a nature hike, and despite hours of searching, we found no trace of him. "He probably just wandered off," Margot said, but her voice lacked conviction. I wasn't so sure. I'd seen the look on the other campers' faces, pure, unadulterated fear, and I couldn't shake the feeling that whatever was out there had taken Tommy. That's when Jake, Sarah, and I decided to investigate. We snuck into Margot's office and found old camp records detailing a counselor who'd gone missing in the 1950s. Rumors suggested the camp had covered it up to avoid bad publicity. "The Watcher," Sarah said, pointing to a faded photo of the missing counselor. "This has to be connected." I felt a chill run down my spine. The legend wasn't just a story. It was real. The next night, another counselor vanished. Mark's cabin was found in disarray, with claw marks on the walls. Panic spread like wildfire, and I struggled to maintain order while grappling with my own fear. "We need to get out of here," Jake said, his voice low. But how? The woods were vast, and whatever was out there was watching us. We decided to investigate the woods, armed with flashlights and a vague plan, As we ventured deeper, the trees seemed to close in around us, and the air grew colder. "This is a terrible idea," I muttered, my breath visible in the cold air. "You got a better one?" Jake asked. I didn't. The night of the annual bonfire, we tried to maintain a sense of normalcy. The campers laughed and roasted marshmallows, but the tension was palpable. I cracked a joke to lighten the mood, but my humor felt forced as I scanned the tree line for signs of movement. Then, the woods went silent. The fire flickered and died, plunging us into darkness. A low, guttural growl echoed from the trees, and chaos erupted as campers screamed and scattered. The Watcher emerged from the shadows, a towering, gaunt figure with glowing eyes. We fought back with whatever we could find, but it was relentless. In a desperate attempt to save the others, Jake distracted the Watcher, allowing me and Sarah to lead the campers to safety. "Jake!" I shouted, but he was gone. We made it back to camp where the power and phones had mysteriously been restored. Margot called the authorities, but I knew they'd never believe the truth. I sat by the lake, staring at the water, grappling with guilt and grief. Years later, I returned to Camp Whispering Pines as the new director. As I recounted the story to a group of wide-eyed campers around a new campfire, I noticed a familiar shadow in the trees, a tall, gaunt figure watching from the darkness. The Watcher was still out there, and it was waiting,